Okay, let's try this again. Hopefully this time I can be a little bit more structured. I found something that I do want to talk about. And that's something that I've been working on for quite some time now. Uh, this is like a passion project, if you will. Been working on it for a really long time. It's been about 3 years already, you know, looking back at it. I started this project um, because I was really passionate about a show called Yu Gi Oh! And for those of you who don't know, which I mean, if you look at my channel, you can tell that that's one of my favorite things to talk about. It was a card game from the early 2000s that would involve you getting a deck of cards, like a like bicycle cards, except in that deck of cards they had pictures of cool monsters on them. And they had a show that came along with the cards. That was a genius idea. And the show basically took the cards out of the actual cards into the real show and made the cards fight each other in this fantasy oriented card game show. Um, I really fell in love with Yu Gi Oh! Let me actually hide this real quick. Transition back. You know, looking back at Yu Gi Oh! Let me pull up a YouTube fucking video. Yu-Gi-Oh was a show that definitely did capture the hearts and minds of kids in the early 2000s. Um, and I might get, copyrighted for playing any of this. So I'll just talk over it and show some images. By the way, we'll talk about this in a second. But this is Yu-Gi-Oh! This was an anime show. And in the early 2000s, the anime took off like wildfire. Kids were playing this card game in school. Kids were collecting cards. They were trading cards. I remember opening my first pack when I got it. It was one of the most memorable parts of my childhood. Um, a lot of kids were into Pokemon, but I feel like Yu Gi Oh! Really gave card games almost an edge, a cooler edge to them that Pokemon didn't have. Pokemon had like cute monsters and stuff like that, and eventually they became badass. But at first, they were just like these cute little monsters that would fight each other, and that was cool. But this was really the show that kind of took me from like watching cartoons like for little kids to watching cartoons more for like teenagers. And it was a turning period. This show really was a turning period in my life. Um, it had a lot of things that were really cool. And watching the show, looking back at it, there was a lot of dark elements to them too that we never really saw because we were kids and we were kind of like, just brushing it off. But I feel like Yu Gi Oh! Was initially made for adults. And I say this because a lot of the darker sides of the show represent something that you've never seen in cartoons before. You've never seen in cartoons, for example, this premise of the Shadow Realm, a place where people can actually die and go to. And it's really dangerous to put people in the Shadow Realm. So it's really important that you win these card games whenever you're dueling against someone who's going to send you to the Shadow Realm to win because you don't want to lose your life. Um, and a lot of those themes were touched on early on in the show in the first season. And it became more trivial after the second season. The stakes did go up at a certain point in the second season. Um, but the Shadow Realm concept really did grasp me, and it made me want to actually expand on it. So I was really looking at this show through rosy lenses, and taking a look back at it, I realized that there was a lot of stuff that the show did that could have been taken further, and maybe the rating could have been upped a bit. And if that would have been the case, we would have had a situation where we would have had an anime that probably wouldn't have been able to play in Cartoon Network, but it could definitely be played on Adult Swim or Toonami. Dragon Ball Z in the first season had a whole bunch of blood, people's arms getting ripped off, people getting shot right through the heart. And 4Kids did censor a lot of that, but I felt that it was still more violent than the traditional cartoons. Yu-Gi-Oh was dark at first, and then as it progressed, it became more and more lighthearted, almost as if they were trying to still capture a childhood audience and not grow with the audience that was watching it. And this happens a lot with children's cartoons, where they always want to keep the audience kids and not grow up with the kids. You know, I feel like that's something that's really important with a show, and I feel like some shows have actually done that fairly successfully. But Yu-Gi-Oh, the series of Yu-Gi-Oh has always been after what was that? Can't even remember. There's so many Yu-Gi-Oh shows. Fucking the one with the motorcycles. Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds. After Yu-Gi-Oh 5Ds, the show took a real hard decline. As far as, like, you know, the concepts in it. It became much less about stakes and much more about the fun of the game. And while towards the end of each of these individual series, and I'm talking about Zexcel, V-Reigns, and Arc V, towards the end of these series, they get really darker. And I think V-Reigns was actually a step in the right directions, but I'll get to that in a second. Towards the end of those series, they would get darker, but in the beginning, it was just totally for kids. It was definitely trying to, like, claw kids into the show. And I looked at it as a slap in the face to the fans of the show, you know, because the card game sure has, you know, its fair share of fans, but the TV show also had its fair share. And maybe, you know, the two didn't really overlap, although that was really hard. You know, it was really hard to watch the show and not buy the cards, especially if the cards were in the show. Like, you would have to buy those cards. Like, there's no, I'm looking at Dark Magician on the screen. There's no way I can go without Dark Magician or Blue Eyes White Dragon or Red Eyes Black Dragon, you know? There's no way I can have a deck without the cards that I see on TV. And those were like, that was like the main moneymaker of the show, the cards. But instead of expanding on their themes and making it not necessarily darker but more mature, instead of doing that, they just started rebooting the show over again and breaking continuity. Although I know later on in the seasons they try to tie things back together loosely, but let's be real, the only continuity is really the first 3 shows. And I'm sure I'm going to get a bunch of comments on that. So that's my background on Yu-Gi-Oh! And like, you know, why I like the show, and what it could improve on. So I thought, what if I can mix the violent elements of Dragon Ball Z and the storytelling of Yu-Gi-Oh! and make that into a show. You know, for all it's worth, Dragon Ball, great show. I'm wearing a Dragon Ball Z shirt right now. Awesome show. Fucking love it. Storytelling is lacking in that show. Toriyama is a big proponent of writing himself into a corner and using the Dragon Balls to get himself out. But the guy who wrote Yu-Gi-Oh, Kashidi something, I can't, hang on, I bet I can find that answer for you right now. 2 seconds. Who is it? Wait, I can't even see, bro. They write it so small now. Oh, dude, it doesn't even say his name anymore. Studio Dice. Who the fuck? These are newer cards. They don't even say his name anymore. They kicked my man Kashidi out of Yu-Gi-Oh! When did I should have gotten the memo on that. Now I'm embarrassed. But this guy's storytelling is way better than Dragon Ball Z storytelling. As stupid as the dialogue is in Yu-Gi-Oh! There is a storyline that was planned out methodically throughout the show, and there's themes of this show that are almost not recreated in any media. Now that I think about it, when have you ever really seen a show, and maybe you have, maybe you can comment, that has your protagonist also be tied to protagonists in the past that always fight, you know, and have generations of those same people's souls. I'm explaining it really wrong. So in Yu-Gi-Oh, they have this part of the history in the Egyptian times where the souls of Yugi and Kaiba, our main characters, are back in the past and they're dueling. And they've always been doing this with like generations of Yugis and Kaibas throughout the millennia. And so I've almost never seen that until Yu-Gi-Oh. It's been done after, but until Yu-Gi-Oh, you never really saw a link from the past to the present and how these souls are actually connected. That's a very unique piece of storytelling. The fact that things that happen in the past are tied to things that are currently happening in the present, and then there's a meaning for everything, and that, you know, Kaiba is the chosen one and Yugi's the chosen one and all this stuff, and they're destined to fight each other, blah blah blah. That's really good storytelling. You know, fighting Frieza and then realizing that you can't win, so instead of surrendering, you wish the Dragon Balls to disappear Frieza is not a good way of storytelling. And I made that plot point up. I'm trying to think of a plot point from Dragon Ball. Oh, when you reach a point where your villain is too strong and there's nothing you can do about it, so you use the Super Dragon Balls to call upon a deity that is in another dimension to come and solve your problem, is not good storytelling. Those are cop-outs. You could argue that, well, Johnny and Yu-Gi-Oh, Yu-Gi always wins in his duels, and that's just the way it is. Well, not necessarily. There are duels in Yu-Gi-Oh where the protagonist does lose, and they do learn from it. And similar to Dragon Ball as well, I'll give them credit. But you never see in Yu-Gi-Oh, well, debatable. I guess you do see in Yu-Gi-Oh like a Dragon Ball situation where whenever the main character needs it, he always draws the right card, and it's almost like that's impossible in the real world with a deck of 40 cards, that in every situation that you're in, you're always going to draw the right card. There's never like a plot point in Yu-Gi-Oh where it's like they draw and they draw the wrong card. It's like, oh crap, it's a fucking Karibo. What the hell am I going to do with this? This doesn't help me at all. Ah! And then they get attacked and they die. That never happens. It's always, I'm about to lose. It's my last turn. Draw. Oh, this is the card that's going to beat the game for me. And so, yeah, that is a cop-out as well. And maybe I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But I feel like Yu-Gi-Oh's storyline is way better than Dragon Ball's storyline. Why? I don't know. The first 3 series, they tie in very well together. They managed to get different protagonists to kind of have relationships with other characters in their respective series. And they really do tie in. What the hell? The stream has been copyrighted audio. I muted my stream, bitch.